Warm welcome to our third press conference in the Alternative Media Center FCMC in Hamburg, St. Pauli. Today, July the 6th, 2017. Lovely to see everybody here today. Warm welcome to representatives of the press and our guests, and everybody who is allowing us to be broadcast into the wide world. Short briefing to our procedure for today. The first half an hour will be statements from our spokespeople today on the podium. Afterwards, you will have the possibility to ask questions in plenum. Our podium, we have a lot of guests today speaking. The statements will be very concentrated, and please take advantage of our additional material in the form of handouts, which you are welcome to take with you, and you are very welcome after the conference to ask for one-on-one interviews. Our press conference today is a platform for alternative perspectives on the topics, and we welcome both local and international guests who are going to give you their view of the topics on G20. Our international guests have a little bit longer speaking time, since we wish to allow the translator to we wish to allow time for the translator. We, the FCMC, offer a platform and a framework for a wide range of perspectives. That means that we are not necessarily associated with the views expressed on this platform. Our job is simply to offer a framework and a platform for as many views as possible, and so we hope to do this for you this morning. I wish to welcome Clotilde Ohouochi, former Minister for Social Affairs in the Ivory Coast, our first guest today, and she is going to tell us about healthcare in Ivory Coast. Miko Hucks from Alles Allen, I'd rather dance than G20. Marvin Hopp and Zazie Götz, Young People Against G20, talking to us today about the education strike on Friday, 7/7. Sinem Mohamed, welcome, and Yavuz Fersoglu, both of them talking today about President Erdoğan's visit to Hamburg from the Kurdish perspective. Andreas Blechschmidt, Alliance Welcome to Hell, and Gabriele, Heineke, Martin Klingner, both lawyers from the Emergency Legal Aid, giving us an update on court rulings on protest camps and on the biased assumption that all left-wing or independent opposition parties are suspicious, and solidarity response to civil democracy. I wish to welcome Pauli Stadium from FCMC, who wishes to make a brief statement this morning. Good morning, everybody. I want to read you a statement today that we have prepared. We, the FCMC, have undertaken a lot in the last few days and made every effort to work in a professional manner, to observe media law, to check facts. The press code of the German Press Council gives clear guidelines to the way journalists should be working in Germany, and that affects us as well. We take the guidelines of the press code extremely seriously. We are convinced that journalists and professional journalism are extremely important for everybody. It is not in vain that the press code urges everyone to take a non-biased view of situations, and you are not guilty before charged. We unfortunately have experienced that the Hamburg police seems to be acting in a rather strange way, and red lines have been crossed, and they've broken a taboo by decriminalizing people who choose to exercise their democratic rights. We have courts to rule on issues of justice. And we have a lot of tension in the next few days until Sunday. And we wish to row against the sensationalist element of journalism reporting. After the statements by our spokesman today, I'm pleased to announce there will be a statement by the Vice President of the St. Pauli Football Club 1910. Now I'd like to ask Clotilde Ohouochi to give her statement.
L'Afrique, pour beaucoup d'entre vous, dans l'imagerie populaire européenne, l'Afrique est représentée par ces centaines de milliers de jeunes gens et de jeunes filles qui viennent mourir dans la Méditerranée, qui viennent frapper à la porte de l'Europe pour avoir une vie meilleure.
Many thanks for your invitation to me to speak today. Africa is represented by many hundreds of thousands of young people who are drowning in the Mediterranean simply because they're looking for a better life. For many of you, Africa symbolizes misery, disease, poverty, epidemics, such as AIDS. To you, Africa symbolizes misery in general.
C'est le continent de la richesse, c'est le continent le plus riche au monde. C'est en Afrique qu'on trouve toutes les matières premières précieuses dont l'Occident a besoin pour son développement.
But this is a view from far away. For us, Africans, our continent symbolizes wealth, the wealthiest continent in terms of raw materials, in terms of all the materials that the West needs. We have gold, petrol, all the raw materials, primary materials that we need, that the West needs for industry. So what's happening? What's going on? Why can Africa not develop despite this wealth of raw materials? The first reason for this lack of development lies with us Africans ourselves. Our leaders are first and foremost business people, and they are interested in filling their own pockets, and they don't take care that the population has well-being and prosperity. And the second reason, the most important reason, is that the African countries are independent in name only. So we Francophone African countries have been independent since 1960, but all the decisions, the really important decisions, are taken in Europe and mostly in France. This massive presence of the West in our African countries prevents that Africa can develop.
Aujourd'hui, Madame Merkel parle de plan Marshall pour l'Afrique, mais tout ce qui est pensé par l'Occident pour l'Afrique, ça ne peut pas marcher.
In the last 60 years, we've had this famous development aid Marshall Plan suggested by Angela Merkel, for example, but this won't work. Because all of these plans and all of these aid offers do not reach the general population. They're simply aligned with business interests so that the West can benefit. If we are to really develop, it is necessary for the West to respect that we can make our own decisions, that we can create our own development. The most important is that the West allows us to think for ourselves, allows us to develop in our own way, so that political systems can be developed that correspond with our way of thinking and with the general consensus of the general population. That's the same as having an 18-year-old child. It's not necessary for the parents to dictate what they should do and what they should not do. They have to decide for themselves. When we can at last take our destiny into our own hands, the world will be astonished at Africa's ability to shape their future for themselves.
La communauté internationale à travers la France notamment, qui est notre ancienne puissance coloniale, n'a pas voulu qu'on mette en place ce projet d'assurance maladie.
I'd like to give you an example. When we set up our own health system in the Ivory Coast, the international community, in this case France, our former colonial power, prevented us from implementing this health system.
aujourd'hui, on aurait eu moins de maladies peut-être dans nos pays africains. Je vous remercie.
If we had been able to implement the health system as we thought, there would be fewer epidemics in West Africa today, and we would be in a much better situation. Many thanks, Clotilde Ohouochi. And now I'd invite Miko Hucks from Alles Ein. I'm here to talk to you about the rave last night throughout the entire city. I have to say that we, as co-organizers of the rave, we were extremely surprised how many people turned up. 20,000 people, we estimate, or more, who proceed a procession through the city, dancing and placing demands on. And as we came to the Reeperbahn, it was a euphoric feeling to be together, a feeling of togetherness among so many people, parents with children, and so many different kinds of people, and other people who had fought for protest camps. People were cheering as we heard that the procession had crossed the border. And it was protest, not necessarily legitimate protest, but it was effective and powerful. The demands that we're making are the same demands that have been made in other demonstrations and protests. And protest shows solidarity with other protests in the city. We condemn the experiences of the last recent months that the establishment, and we won't be splintered and we won't be fragmented.
Vielen Dank, Miko Hucks von Alles Ein. Auf dem Podium weiter geht es mit Marvin Hopp und Zazie Götz.
And now I'd like to welcome Marvin Hopp and Zazie Götz for Young People Against G20. We're from the Young People Against G20, an alliance of over 40 anti-fascist and trade union organizations from the whole of Germany. We are one of the largest alliances of the last decades, recent decades. Broad range of different kinds of people, all of us against G20, against capitalism, which generates its profit by exploiting humanity and environment. We have planned various campaigns. On the 8th of July, we'll be taking part in the universal demonstration against G20 here in Hamburg. We've got buses of young people traveling to Hamburg, and many other young people are already in the city and are looking for accommodation, overnight accommodation. On Friday, the 7th of July, we have organized a large education strike. We have a confrontation at the moment between the local education authority, representing the teachers, with the students. And Zazie Götz has prepared a statement on this particular issue, which she will inform. Good morning, everybody. Friday, 10:30, our education strike will start. We've been planning this for quite a while. We've mobilized many students, and all the young people have organized this themselves. 40 youth organizations are supporting our campaign. The Teachers Trade Union is also supporting us, and they have showed tolerance towards our idea to launch this campaign. We sent a letter to all directors of schools, and we have This letter, open letter, had the consequence that students were intimidated and threatened that they should not take part in our education strike. And a strike only makes sense if people are allowed to strike in protest of what one criticizes. So our idea is to demand a different kind of education system with our campaign. G20 symbolizes a system that exploits in order to make profit, and that uses young people only as instruments to create profit for the system. We expect 400 to 800 participants, and thank you for listening.
Vielen Dank. Zazie Götz und Marvin Hopp von Jugend gegen G20. Jetzt das Wort an Sinem Mohamed.
And now I welcome Sinem Mohamed from the PYD.
Thank you so much for inviting me today to talk about the suffering of our people, my country in Syria, and in particular in Rojava, in the north of Syria. I'm representing the democratic administration of Rojava of north of Syria, here in Europe. It's my honor today to talk about what's happening in my country. Of course, you all know and you heard about Syria. Now 7 years, still we have conflict, still we have more refugees in all over the world, still we have the people have been killed till now in all over Syria, still we have more radical groups increasing in Syria, like ISIS. In all this situation, we in the north of Syria, in Rojava, we could create the coexistence between all the people who are living there, between the Arabs, the Kurds, the Assyrian, the Christians, Armenian, Turkmen. All together, we could build the federal system, democratic federal system in the north of Syria. Of course, our project is depending to have the Syria democratic federalism for all over Syria. But because now we are controlling the north of Syria, and we could liberate a large area from the ISIS, the terrorists of ISIS there, we now could also build this project. It is the democratic federalism in the north of Syria. Of course, we have for Syria more and more Geneva talks. 6 Geneves is there, but nothing has been happened. No solution. Till now, nothing is forced to solve the problem of Syria. We, as in the north of Syria and Rojava, we are excluded from the Geneva talks. We are not being included in it. We are asking why. They say, oh, because Erdoğan, he doesn't want you to be in the Geneva talks. Because of the Turkey, they don't want to be in the Geneva talks. So I'm asking now, today we are here in Hamburg, and the G20, the Turkish government, Erdoğan, he will be here. At the same time he is attending this G20, his artillery is attacking my city, Afrin. At this moment, my city, Afrin, which is in the north of Syria, now is under the attack of the Turkish artillery and tanks. 5 people have been killed yesterday, 3 women and 2 children. They are civilians. They are killing the civilians. They are only bombing the cities, safe cities. No ISIS is there. No Assad, the regime of Assad is there. Just they are attacking our system. They want to attack the federal system, the democratic federal system. So Erdoğan, he created a lot of crimes in our country. Let me talk about one or some of them. First of all, he occupied some Syrian lands in Jarablus, in Al-Bab, in Azaz. He is there. Another thing, he is now building walls around the city of Afrin. The Erdoğan now is cutting the trees of my city. 5,000 olive trees have been cut only to build the walls. And when you talk, he's building the walls in my territory, in my land. But when we talk about it, he said, I am having the security for my country. What kind of security he has, you know? When ISIS is on the border, he never used to say anything. When ISIS was there, he did not do anything. When we now liberated this city from ISIS, he is now creating such crimes. For that, I am just calling the international community. I am calling all the democratic nations in all over the world and here in Germany to support our democratic struggle in the north of Syria and in Rojava. Thank you so much.
Dear friends, my name is Yavuz Fersoglu. I'm from the Community Center, the Alliance of Kurdish Associations in Germany. In my opinion, Erdoğan's presence in Germany at the moment is a provocation for Kurdish people and for the democratic parties in Turkey, and also the provocation for democracy in Germany. He's committed serious war crimes in Kurdish areas, crimes against humanity. Erdoğan is blanket bombing Iraq and Syria. Turkish forces are stationed in Syria. He is imprisoning members of the opposition party HDP in Turkey. Elected mayors who are HDP members have also been relieved of their posts and imprisoned. All of this symbolizes the character of this G20, which we reject, because it's supporting the war of the Turkish state and has been supporting it by delivering arms to Turkey with political declarations, also from Germany. Germany is also arming Turkey. In recent months, many important figures in German politics have been warning against so-called violent Kurdish organizations and have banned organizations like the PKK and have criminalized the PKK and others. In this year, the Kurdish organizations PJC were banned here, and we are protesting against these bans. We are part of this movement against G20 this week. We call Kurds and non-Kurds to join us on Saturday and to voice their protest on the streets. Thank you very much.
Vielen Dank, Yavuz Fersoglu, Sinem Mohamed. Es geht weiter mit Andreas Blechschmidt.
Hello everybody, I'm speaking today for the Allowance of Welcome to Hell. Today at 4 p.m. we are going to have an open declaration of our demonstration, which will start. We will welcome international guests to our demonstration in the Fischmarkt, and we will continue tomorrow with our protest where it belongs, at the Messerhallen. G20 is not the solution. It's not the solution to war, inequality, starvation. It's responsible for all these things. And it's not a legitimate or a constructive actor in these political issues. We will be part of the blockade tomorrow in Hamburg, and we'll be taking part in the universal demonstration on Saturday. The alliance that I'm speaking for today has been the target in the last week of stigmatization and scenarios that seem to have been out of the blue. The Hamburg ruling against freedom of assembly without regulation and a risk assessment which seems to represent a massive campaign by the local authorities and a non-critical judgment of press. We have the local authority for freedom of assembly seems to think that it can rule against protests by our organization without proper grounding in law. And yet we've been allowed, with our organization, has been allowed closer to the Messerhallen than every other, which would seem to speak for the idea that this is not the view of the local authorities of us is not the case. We wish to shift the focus towards who represents violence and who does not. And thank you very much.
Vielen Dank, Andreas Blechschmidt. Es geht weiter mit Gabriele.
We welcome Gabriele Heineke. Good morning, everybody. I'm speaking for the emergency legal aid. We can establish the following things. This is a field campaign by the local authorities, a civil war exercise, and who is that for? Biased assumption that everybody against G20 is somehow suspicious. We have the strong impression that the politics and police is really hoping or half hoping that something happens to justify their action and their attitudes. And it is not so that there's no risk, but they seem to are just giving the impression that we have freedom of assembly, and actually we seem to have the opposite of freedom of assembly, and that makes us very worried. We are also worried that we get the impression that the courts seem to have abdicated from their role. Entenworte was allowed, and at the same time the police marches in and clears it. And I have to say this, shits on the court ruling. That the court ruling does not interest them, has nothing to do with them, and that is a violation of the distribution of powers. The police seems to be taking over the role of government and taking over the decision-making institutions that are actually responsible. Possibly the Supreme Administration Court of Hamburg seems to have understood something. They did initially rule against the protest, but we have demands from de Maizière from in Berlin, and we need to have state of emergency constitution according to Berlin. We don't need this at all. What we need is a guarantee of basic rights and a freedom of assembly. And we seem, I'm pleased to say, to be fighting for these rights in these days in Hamburg. I'm Martin Klingner from the Emergency Legal Aid. Good morning, everybody. I represent the anti-capitalist camp, which originally was supposed to take place in the Stadtpark in Hamburg, and then was registered in the Entenwerder Green. Yesterday there was a confrontation. It ended, the confrontation ended. It had been going on for 10 weeks. The Supreme Administrative Court of Hamburg ruled in an express procedure for a permit for 2 to 3 people and a kitchen could be erected. That doesn't sound much. It isn't much. And it's a lot less than we asked for. However, it's a legal breakthrough because it shows that the police action was a violation of legality, was illegal. And in the night, Sunday to Monday, where the tents were cleared from Entenberg, with truncheons and pepper spray, this has been shown as an illegal action. As Gabi said before me, the police don't seem to respect court rulings and chose the executive against the legislative, and that's a scandal which will have consequences. And they will be held accountable in the future. Mr. Döder, the police president, should resign. And those responsible should be held accountable. That is the minimum demand that we will make. The camp, which was led in the terms of the basic rights, was ended in a way. Such camps are under the protection of the scope of basic laws, and the police seem to have been instructed to prevent any kind of camp, and the protesters have decided not to go back to Entenwerder since they've decided that it is because of police violence. This ban of political camps in Hamburg has one aim: to signal to people outside Hamburg, you're not welcome. You are welcome. Come. We have taken over green areas. Private people have offered their gardens as accommodation, and that is the right reaction. We hope that this police force, with their idea of implementation, we will make demands that the police are once again under the control of legislative powers and local authorities. The idea of having a state of emergency in a democratic state is not permissible. Thank you. And now I wish to welcome the Vice President of the football club St. Pauli, who will make a statement. Good morning, everybody. I'm here to announce that we at the St. Pauli Football Club, we will be offering our pitch for overnight accommodation for participants in the demonstration. The main stadium, took a whole day to inspect what we could do, what we couldn't do, and we've agreed with the organizers of the camp. So the places have been taken. We have 200 places for overnight accommodation. We weren't prepared for this because we believed that the local authorities would allow the demonstrations in this to take an overnight stay and to allow demonstrators to take part in demonstrations with a good night's sleep. And we believe that we have done the right thing in offering accommodation in this way.
Vom FC St. Pauli. Und jetzt ist Gelegenheit für Sie als Vertreterinnen und Vertreter der Medien und der Presse Fragen zu stellen. Ich möchte Sie bitten, Ihre Hände möglichst sichtbar in die Höhe zu halten, damit diejenigen, die mit dem Mikrofon unterwegs sind, um Sie zu verstärken, Sie auch sehen. Und außerdem möchte ich Sie darum bitten, Sie sich selbst vorzustellen, per Namen und das Medium zu nennen, für das Sie hier berichten. Eine Meldung dort hinten. Vielleicht kriegen wir das Mikro durch die engen Sitzreihen für alle diejenigen, die von draußen gucken und uns hier auf dem Podium sehen. Ein kleines Lagebild. Wir sind hier in einem Stadion, dem schönen St. Pauli Stadion, und die Presse sitzt auf sehr eng beisammenstehenden Sitzreihen, wo ansonsten die Fußballfans sitzen. Von daher kann es ab und zu sein, dass wir ein bisschen Manövrierzeit brauchen, um das Mikrofon an den richtigen Platz zu kriegen. Jetzt ist es da. Bitte sehr.
Danke. Christoph Twickel von der Zeit. Eine Frage an
Christoph Twickel von der Zeit.
Gab es denn schon Druck von der Versammlungsbehörde oder der Polizei?
Have you experienced pressure from the local authorities responsible for freedom of assembly that you shouldn't offer overnight accommodation in St. Pauli? No, we haven't experienced pressure from the local authorities. Our supervising committee decided very quickly that we need to react, that there's a lack of overnight accommodation in the city, and that's why we are making it available. We haven't experienced pressure from any other party for or against. Second question to Andreas Blechschmidt. Are you expecting court rulings, bans before the protest this afternoon? No, I'm not expecting that anymore. After the drama of the recent days, and particularly intimidation of left-wing parties, we expected it to be prevented. However, they have also sent us a letter in answer to our registration. I can't see into the future. Could be in the course of the demonstration, we may have certain issues with the police who are on site, who may restrict the scope of our demonstration as we wish to go towards the Messerhallen. And it's difficult to forecast how the police will act. Also in terms of the scope of our freedom of assembly.
Vielen Dank, Andreas Blechschmidt. Eine nächste Frage. Ich sehe keine Hände. Ich frage noch einmal nach. Doch, hier vorne in der ersten Reihe.
I'm from a media in Belgium, and so how are you going to solve the problem of accommodation? Because I heard that the big camps are supposed to accommodate like 5,000 people, and are you expecting that many people to come, and how are you going to solve this problem of accommodation?
Wer möchte darauf antworten? Wir hatten dieses Thema eben schon mit sehr,
We covered this subject with some spokesmen have already spoken on this subject. Andreas Blechschmidt. Yesterday, I was speaking with people who are responsible for constitutional law in Hamburg, with a view to, and it doesn't seem to match with the general attitude of people protesting. There are on many, many levels people who are trying to offer accommodation, from private individuals to churches. Our football club, St. Pauli, is also rescuing the situation by offering places. So the Hamburg authorities have not allowed people to stay overnight. They have to do this. And in practical terms, this was organized in advance. Nationwide, people have joined together to offer catering and overnight accommodation. And we have a wide network of people who are offering support for the protesters. And a very, very good, we hope to have a very good, well-organized protest on the streets.
Von Faznet. Auch noch eine
Faznet.
Frage an Herrn Blechschmidt, und zwar, Sie haben ja davon gesprochen, dass Sie im Vorfeld denunziert worden seien mit der Veranstaltung, die heute Abend geplant worden ist, in der Frage, ob Gewalt von den Demonstranten eben dort zu erwarten ist. Können Sie denn ausschließen, dass Gewalt...
You've been criticized for underplaying the potential for violence at this demonstration. Nobody can see into the future. So I don't like looking in the crystal ball, but I wish to make one thing very clear. I'm here on this speaking for an alliance that has been organized for several months, and we have also thought that possibly our demonstration has the potential to be the target for biased assumptions that there will be violence. When we think of the ruling from 2 days ago on the risk assessment of violence, then we have to see that the expected violence has not been realized at all. So I don't believe that I have to comment on some kind of fantasies about violence, since this has no grounding in reality. Politically legitimate protests should not be stigmatized, and I won't be complicit in that kind of strategy. Question to youth against G20. The education authority seems to have tried to intimidate the education strike. What can you tell me about this? We have the open letter from the local authority in front of us and the press release about it. I can read you what it says. To all the headmasters and headmistresses of schools in Hamburg, we call students to participate in an education strike on the 7th of 7th, 10:30. We ask you to excuse students from their lessons at that time.
Unterrichtszeit eine Schulpflichtverletzung dar, die Teilnahme von Bediensteten eine Dienstpflichtverletzung. Die Teilnahme an der Demonstration als praktischer Unterricht ist schon wegen der politischen Neutralität des staatlichen Schulwesens ausgeschlossen. Dass auf einen solchen Demonstration die Schülerinnen und Schüler Gefahren ausgesetzt.
Kurze Unterbrechung.
Ja?
Das ging ein bisschen zu schnell für
Okay.
die Dolmetscherin. Vielleicht die letzten 3 Sätze nochmal.
Okay, die letzten 3 Sätze. Deshalb stellt die Teilnahme von Schülerinnen
This is why participation
während der Unterrichtszeit
of students and teachers is a violation of their duties.
die Teilnahme an einer Demonstration
Participation in a demonstration during lesson time is not allowed for reasons of political neutrality.
die Schülerinnen und Schüler Gefahren ausgesetzt sein können,
Students and teachers may be exposed to dangers,
realisieren ist, wissen sie.
and
Fall treten Schul-
this
und Dienstpflicht auch nicht hinter
is
dem
not in the sense of protection
Recht nach Artikel 8 Grundgesetz zurück.
and is not
Wie aus den Medien bekannt, gibt es
compatible with the basic law.
überwiegend außerhalb der Unterrichtszeit, an denen die Schülerinnen und Schüler
Such events
teilnehmen und ihre Absichten wirksam kundtun.
should be held outside of lesson time, school time.
Klein.
Kind regards, Klein.
Die nächste Frage bitte.
Schönen guten Tag, mein Name ist Kurdish. Meine Frage geht an Frau Clotilde Ohouochi. Sie haben nach Ihrer Darstellung, dass Sie war selber auch Sozialministerin in
You were
und
Minister for Social Affairs in Ivory Coast, and everything that you are trying to do, as you expressed that you were prevented by the French government when you were in your post as minister, as you were implementing the health system. Have you got a concrete example of this prevention? Thank you.
Oui, on a des exemples concrets parce
Yes,
que,
of course, I have concrete examples.
ce que nous appelons communément le néocolonialisme est très pernicieux et très
Neocolonialism is very pernicious,
de l'Afrique, notamment de l'Afrique francophone. Et donc, quand vous avez, par exemple, des initiatives qui sont pensées peut-être par les Africains eux-mêmes,
so if you have initiatives that have been thought out by the Africans themselves,
de l'ancien colonisateur qui est la France, cette initiative
prevented by the former colonial power France.
Ja, vielen Dank für die Frage. Ich habe es vorhin schon gesagt, der Neokolonialismus ist für uns in Afrika noch sehr präsent, vor allem auch in den französischsprachigen Ländern. Und wir erleben eben sehr häufig, dass die Initiativen, die angegangen werden, auch selbst durch die afrikanischen Länder selber immer noch sehr stark geprägt sind von den alten kolonialen
Initiatives implemented by Africans themselves are very influenced by neocolonial powers such as France.
Vous savez que l'assurance maladie, en Afrique, il n'y en a pas. Il n'y a pas d'assurance maladie. Lorsqu'on est malade en Afrique, si on n'a pas les moyens financiers, c'est sûr qu'on va inéluctablement vers la mort. Et donc, quand au niveau de la Côte d'Ivoire, le président Gbagbo est arrivé au pouvoir, il a voulu mettre en place cette assurance maladie. Mais ce n'était pas du goût de l'ancien colonisateur, notamment de la France, et donc ce projet n'a pas pu voir le jour parce que la France n'était pas d'accord de la façon dont on voulait mettre en place cette assurance maladie.
Ich nehme mal als ganz konkretes Beispiel die
As a very concrete example, we don't have health insurance in Africa, and most people don't have means. Since the seizure of power by Gbagbo, we've been trying to introduce a new health system, and this wasn't to the liking of the French government, and therefore we were not allowed to implement it in the way we wanted.
Je peux donner,
Beispiel.
Vielen Dank.
That is a concrete example.
Die nächste Frage. Ich sehe mehrere Hände. Die Dame mit der schwarzen Friedensjacke. Das Mikro kommt. Das Mikro kommt. Es wird durchgereicht in die 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Reihe. Jetzt ist es da.
Danke, Sabine Siebold von Reuters. Eine Frage an Herrn Blechschmidt. Sie haben der Polizei und dem Verfassungsschutz vorgeworfen, den Protest insgesamt.
You've criticized the police and the constitutional legal authorities here in Hamburg. The police say that they are evaluating a connection between. Can you say something about that? No.
Die nächste Frage, bitte. Hier vorne.
Ich wollte Frau Hucke noch eine Frage stellen.
Question to Frau
Wer hat
Hucko.
denn den Einsatz der Polizei gestern Abend bei der Demo?
How did you experience the police at the demonstration last night?
Die Polizei verhalten hat, haben Sie das auch so erlebt?
The word is that the police were showing defensive behavior. Can you confirm this?
Ja, ich habe das auch so erlebt, aber ich war...
Yes, I can. I experienced that to be the case.
Wir waren überrascht, wie viele Leute da
We were
waren.
surprised how many people came,
Die Polizei war auch
and the police
überrascht.
were equally surprised how many people came.
Ich habe aber auch ein Verhalten erlebt, was mich auch sehr beschäftigt hat. Also nicht nur
I have unfortunately seen behavior that I was very worried about, particularly at Gänsemarkt where a water cannon was used, although the demonstration was still going on and it was clearly the case that nothing was happening that would justify the use of water cannon.
und es gab so diese Kommunikationsteams, die auch am Rande
The
mitgelaufen
police have communication teams who walked with the demonstration, and the people in demonstrating were spoken to throughout the demonstration by the communication team, which we thought was strange. But actually,
keine Expertin im Bewerten von
I have no idea. I cannot really evaluate police behavior.
Fragen? Nochmal sichtbar die Hände hoch, wenn es welche gibt. Ich sehe keine weiteren Hände. Und damit haben wir das Ende dieser dritten Pressekonferenz im Internationalen Medienzentrum FCMC erreicht. Aber auch jetzt, wie immer am Schluss der Pressekonferenzen, der Hinweis auf die folgende Pressekonferenz, und zwar morgen am 7. Juli zu einer anderen Uhrzeit als bisher immer 9:30 Uhr, morgen um 12 Uhr. Unter anderem auf dem Podium sitzen wird Dr. Boga Sako, Präsident der Menschenrechtsorganisation FIDOP, Fondation Ivoirienne pour les droits de l'homme et de la vie politique. Außerdem dabei Vertreterinnen des Bündnisses Block G20 und des Bündnisses der Großdemonstration Grenzenlose Solidarität G20. Jetzt wird es, wie gesagt, im Anschluss die Möglichkeit geben, O-Töne und Interviews in Einzelsituationen zu führen. Ich danke Ihnen für Ihr Erscheinen und sage Tschüss, bis morgen. Stay tuned.